welcome to RevU. Welcome. It is a great day today, and thank you for choosing to be with us at RevRoad today for our monthly RevRoad University. We're so excited to have everybody here in the office live, shaking hands again, fist bumping. We're seeing it happen. And also for those of you joining online, thank you for joining. A couple of just mentions I want to make you aware of. If you have a comment or a question throughout today's event, please raise your hand. We have mic runners. Those who are joining online can't hear you if you're here. And those who are online, if you have a comment or a question for our workshop or speakers, type it in the chat. We do have someone that is monitoring that, and we will make sure we get that out there. Okay, so make sure that you participate because it's going to be a great day. All right, so I am Amy Caldwell. I am the Chief Business Development Operator or Officer. I kind of joke when I say my title because everyone has like the abbreviated CBD-O. Do you get that? Thank you, Darren. Thank you. I usually try to say it faster, right? CBD-O. It's only funny in Colorado. Never mind. Okay. And the co-founder here at RevRoad. So we have a couple housekeeping items I want to make you aware of. The restroom is right out here through the front to the lobby. Men's and women's, feel free. We're pretty casual around here, so don't worry if you need to stop and take a little exit during the event. And we love it when you come and you sit in the middle. And can I just thank all of you? Because check this out. How many empty seats do we have? Like none. Way to be brave today, everyone. Thank you for sitting next to someone new and meeting a new friend today. And that's something that we really like to foster here at RevRoad. So good job. Pat yourself on the back for being brave, and hopefully you've exchanged information with someone new by the end of today. All right. I do have a couple of announcements that I want to make as well. You all saw a little card sitting on your chairs when you came in. Who has ever been to our entrepreneurship competition? Okay, non-RevRoad. All right, we've got a challenge for each of you. We have our annual entrepreneurship competition. It's taking place September 18th. Applications are open on our website, revroad.com. Apply to the e-comp. And then this is a unique type of competition. So typically RevRoad, being a venture service group, we're interested in high growth opportunities for our portfolio. The application for the entrepreneurship competition is slightly different. It's open to anyone, lifestyle kind of company. So idea type company. Round one is you apply. Round two is making it to the semi-final selection, which you'll come here on the 18th, pitch to a panel of amazing judges, make great connections, networking. It'll be phenomenal. Feedback, terrific. You'll then try to shoot for the final position. There's only 6 chosen for that day, and then whoever makes that final selection position comes and pitches their business on the stage for some cash prizes that are, again, pretty valuable to your startup. So if you know someone, if you have a business and you're interested, take the card, apply, share, or just come because it's a great event to be a part of. All right, so let me go back to RevRoad. We are a venture service group. Who knows what that means? Okay, I'm going to challenge someone who's yes. Carson. Can we get him a mic? Thanks, Brad.
Can you hear me? At least from what I understand, it's not only, let's say, like a venture capitalist group, which supplies money, but it's a venture service group, which also applies guidance and direction in upcoming companies, as well as money and other connections. So that's what I understand, at least.
Thank you, Carson. Thank you. All right. You get a T-shirt, Carson. You ready? And you're a swag guy, so I know you like swag. Stop it, Jason. Yes, you do. And we'll hear a little bit more from Carson later in the event. Okay, so I have another challenge. Who's going to either apply? No, who's going to apply for the e-comp? Okay, let's pick a number between 1 and 30. Diane, 16, 22. Was there another hand? Was there another hand? Okay. It was 15. Diane, you get a water bottle. All right. So I'll be looking for that, Diane. Those applications come straight to me. So I'll be watching for your application to come through. All right. So let me give you just a brief kind of rundown of what our event looks like today. We will be having our workshop on taxes by Joe Hillstead with Squire and Yuki from RevRoad. And let me just give you a quick introduction of their bios. And following that, we will switch over to our Builder series where Bree Ray will introduce our amazing featured founder today, Brad Bonham. And I'll save that little secret for Bree to do. So let's introduce Joe and Yuki. Why don't you guys come on up? All right, Joe has become a good friend here at RevRoad. He's one of our preferred partners, just a great guy. I know his sister, random event how that happened, but come from a good family. So Joe is a tax partner with Squire. He has over 17 years of experience working with clients on a broad range of tax issues and specializes in corporate tax matters, including mergers and acquisitions, international transactions, transferring pricing. Prior to Squire, in 2014, Joe spent 10 years with PwC in Southern California and Washington, D.C. And Yuki, how am I saying that? Yuki Yoshi Sato is one of our amazing business operations specialists. We call him BizOps for short. It's kind of our nickname for an intern. And our BizOps here at RevRoad go above and beyond what you'd expect an internship to be. And he is a BYU student. We service a lot of the universities here with our supporting their internships by bringing them on as a BizOp. So Yuki, which we endearingly call him, works directly in our finance and capital team. Before that, he worked at a student startup company called International Hub, which specializes in ed tech. Yuki is currently studying finance at Brigham Young University and graduates in 2 years. So let's give it up for Joe and Yuki.
All right. First of all, Joe, thank you for being here with us. And, hold on. There you go. There we go. Yes. So, with 4th of July coming up, we're remembering no taxation without representation. The Founding Fathers felt so strongly about this, they rebelled, went to war, and formed a new nation. So, why do we have taxes? Well, what if we could just stop paying them and, create a new government? Well, this is what the people in Family Guys decided to do. And let's see what happened.
People of Quahog, I have something to say. Now that we've freed ourselves from the terrible shackles of government, it's time to replace it with something better. The first thing we need is a system of rules that everyone must live by.
Gotta have rules.
And since we can't spend all our time making rules, I think that we should elect some people to represent us, and they should make rules and choices on our behalf. Now, this may be kind of expensive, so I got a plan. Everyone should have to give some money from their salaries each year. Poor people will give a little bit of money, and rich people will give a larger amount of money. And our representatives will use all that money to hire some people who will then provide us with social order and basic services.
Ugh, there's not one shirt I wish I had out there.
Now, it won't be perfect. Some of our representatives may end up being bastards. But you know what? That's okay. Because later we're going to have more elections, and we can use those elections to get rid of the bad guys and replace them with good guys. And then the system will just keep going on and on, just like that. Yeah. So who's with me? Will you join me in trying this new crazy thing? Yeah. Then let's do it. Yeah, and we did it all without government.
I'm very proud of you, Peter.
Oh, Lois, that means nothing to me. I only care what they say on the internet message boards. Aw.
So no matter what you do, we still need taxes. And this is what a former president during the Great Depression once said. Taxes, after all, are the dues that we pay for the privileges of membership in an organized society. So, where does the U.S. get that spending from? Well, in 2020, they received $3.4 trillion, and most of it came from income and payroll taxes, and 7% corporate taxes. And what did they spend it on? There you go. Well, the U.S. government spent $6.6 trillion, which is more than the $3.4 trillion that they received. So we're operating at a deficit. But the part shaded in blue is what's non-discretionary and the government has to pay. And the part in red is what they... Oh, is it not working? Okay, great. Yeah, so the part in red is discretionary. And of all the government spending...
We'll try one more.
Wait, no. All right, whoa. All right. And of that spending, 9% was on interest. And so we're operating at a fairly low interest rate environment. And so some of the taxes that businesses have to worry about include federal and state income tax, payroll, capital gain, property, excise, estate, sales, tariffs, VAT, a whole lot of taxes. So how do startups build their business while complying with all those taxes and tax laws? The answer: partner with a trusted service provider like Squire. So with us today is Joe from Squire.
Yuki, great job. Really great job. I'm really excited to be here to talk about taxes. It's an enthralling topic. I'm pinch hitting for Bart Scala right now, and if he were here, there would be a much more interesting topic than taxes. So we thought that what RevRoad portfolio companies and entrepreneurs like yourselves, we thought of 3 topics that would be of most interest to you, and those 3 being choice of legal entity to run your business. Number 2, what is the current legislative agenda look like in terms of changes to current tax law? And then the third piece is a question we get frequently is related to equity-based compensation, stock-based compensation. How do I retain my talent in a tax-efficient way? How do I grant them equity in my business in the most tax-efficient way? So those are the 3 things that we're going to talk about. So let's start out, and I'm going to breeze through this kind of choice of entity topic first because I understand RevRoad's had a training on this recently. But right, generally we're talking about 2 choices, especially in this RevRoad type of environment in terms of legal entity, and that's a corporation taxed as a C corporation, and then an LLC taxed as a partnership. Notice that I've left out what you've probably heard of as an S corporation. An S corporation has a lot of restrictions like which type of shareholders, how many classes of stock you can issue, the number of shareholders, and things like that. So in this environment, it's a little less applicable. So let's talk about choice of entity as a C corporation. So here are the advantages and disadvantages of a C corporation, right? You're all familiar that a C corporation offers limited liability. Its corporate documentation is generally less complex than an operating agreement of an LLC. The third bullet point here is familiarity. We find that in this environment here in Silicon Slopes and in Utah, that many employees are much more familiar with stock-based compensation of a C corporation. They're familiar with stock grants. They're familiar with stock options, whether that's incentive stock options, non-qualified stock options. So there seems to be a little bit more familiarity in that C Corp setting, as opposed to an LLC taxed as a partnership that issues membership units. Those membership units could be a profits interest or a capital interest, and all of those grants have different taxation benefits and detriments. We're going to get a little bit into that. You know, I want to skip to this next bullet point, is that a C Corp is a taxable entity. It files its own tax return and it pays corporate income tax. Right now, the federal corporate income tax rate is 21%. The proposal right now by the Biden administration is to increase that from 21 to 28%. Prior to 2018, the corporate tax rate was as high as 35%, and we were at kind of, in terms of the countries of the world, we were at the top of the list. When we go down to 21%, in terms of the G7 countries, we're the second lowest. The UK is approximately at 19%. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. You know, another benefit or advantage of a C corporation is obviously it's easier to go public. I think generally an SEC registrant is a corporation. Usually it's a Delaware corporation. Investors are very familiar with that. Many institutional investors prefer C corps. You know, they don't like the administrative burden of receiving a K-1 and relying on that K-1 to file their income taxes. So, you know, VC and private equity sometimes will say, we want you to be a C Corp as opposed to an LLC. But that's just sometimes. You know, this last bullet point I'm going to get on into is a home run in our world. It's called qualified small business stock, sometimes called Section 1202 stock. It's an incentive that Congress put into the code that wants investors to invest in small businesses and granted some really good tax benefits, and I'm going to get into that later on. The disadvantage, the big one for a C Corp, double taxation. There's taxation at the C Corp level, and any dividends of profit up to shareholders is again taxed at the individual shareholder. That's the big disadvantage, at least in my world, right? Also, there's much more formalities in a C corporation generally. You've got to have periodic board meetings, board minutes, stock registers, and many of you know, our entrepreneur clients, formality is not something that they're great at, and they shouldn't be great at that stuff. Leave that to the bean counters and the attorneys. All right, I think let's keep going. So here's a quick example of the taxation of a C Corp. So as you can see, the square is the C Corporation. It generates a profit of $100,000 during 2021. It's taxed at 26%. Remember, 21% federal. Utah is a little less than 5%, so just call it 26%. So the C Corp itself cuts a check to the IRS in the state of Utah for $26,000, leaving $74,000 of after-tax cash flow. Right? If the C Corp just retains all of that, $74,000, that we stop our analysis there, and the effective tax rate is 26%. But if the shareholders want a return on that, want that profit dividended, we make a dividend distribution up for $74,000. And the tax rate generally for a qualified dividend in totality here is, I've got 28.3. So 20% capital gains rate, 5% for Utah, give or take, an additional 3.8 net investment tax, so call it 28. So in totality, we're looking at almost $47,000 of tax in totality, giving us almost a 47% effective tax rate, right? So that's the big downside of a C Corp. So, but let's talk about that one advantage, that qualified small business stock, right? Back in 1993, Congress put into the Internal Revenue Code, this Section 1202, with the intent for investors to invest in small businesses. And the rub is that if you are an owner of qualified small business stock and you hold that stock for more than 5 years and you sell the stock, then potentially the greater of $10 million or 10 times your investment is not subject to federal income tax. That's a home run in my world. Tax law is so prescriptive these days that it's difficult. So as you guys think about choice of entity, keep this qualified small business stock provision in mind. Let me give you an example instead of talking through some of the bullet points, right? I'm an investor. I've got $1 million in extra cash. I invest that $1 million back into a C corporation that's in a business that provides technology, software, manufacturing, a group of other listed type of businesses. Right, I get stock in exchange for my $1 million investment. Let's say that happens June 30th of 2016. I hold on to that stock for 5 years. The value appreciates, and I sell my stock on July 1st today, 2021. Right? Let's say my proceeds are $10 million. So I received $10 million. I invested $1 million, so my gain is $9 million. Well, 1202 stock would say you can exclude the greater of that of $10 million or 10 times your basis. In both instances, this would be $10 million. So in other words, I would not be taxed on that $9 million gain under this Section 1202 provision. So you can see some of the things that need to happen. The key piece is the holding period. It's that 5 years. And it needs to be a small business, meaning when I received that stock back on June 30th of 2016, the gross assets of the corporation had to be $50 million or less. So that's kind of the definition of it. And then lastly, it needs to be certain industries. If I invested in an accounting firm, for example, financial services, that's an excluded industry, wouldn't qualify. For many of the RevRoad portfolio companies and entrepreneurs here, most of your industries are going to qualify. Technology, manufacturing, consumer products, things like that, that will all generally qualify for qualified small business stock. Okay. LLC tax as a partnership, right? Let me just hit on kind of the high points for an LLC tax as a partnership. Number one, it's pass-through taxation as opposed to double taxation. There's generally fewer formalities, which is a benefit to entrepreneurs. And usually there's an additional 20% deduction on pass-through income that a C corporation gets. And then, of course, the disadvantages, LLC operating agreements can be complex, and even though it's a pass-through entity, some states require an entity-level tax. Here's an example, right? We've got two shareholders. They own an interest in an LLC 50-50. Notice I put it as a triangle, meaning it's a pass-through. Same net income generated of $100,000. The LLC is not a taxable entity. It files an informational tax return, but it doesn't pay tax. Instead, it passes its income up to its shareholders through a mechanism called a K-1. Those shareholders get that K-1 and they report their share of the $100,000 on their individual tax return. So for those individuals in the highest federal tax bracket of 37% federal plus 5 Utah, they'd cut a check in totality of $42,000, and we stop there. So effective tax rate in this situation, $42,000 compared to the effective tax rate in this situation, 42% versus the 47% in the C corporation setting. So you can see, overall, which gives the best after-tax cash flow. Okay, let's go on to our second topic, and that's proposed changes to tax law. Back in May, end of May, U.S. Treasury issued what's called the Green Book. The Green Book is the Biden administration's kind of guidepost for what it would like to do in terms of changes to tax law. Now, of course, Congress is the one that ultimately determines what will happen, but I wanted to just give you an update on what at least U.S. Treasury and the Biden administration is thinking in terms of changes to that. So the first bullet point is that right now the individual income tax rates range from 10% all the way up to 37%. An individual that files a joint return doesn't hit that 37% bracket right now unless your taxable income is north of $600,000. Well, the proposal on the table is that rate would be increased to 39.6%, and that those individuals would hit that, approximately $509,000, I think is what the Green Book has said. So that's point number one. Point number two, right now, if you've got long-term capital gains, right, a capital asset such as C Corp stock or other type of capital asset, if you sell that and recognize a gain, the tax on that is at lower preferential rates. Those rates right now are either 0%, 15%, or 20%. And you're in those brackets depending on where your taxable income lies. But generally, call it about 15 or 20%. So the proposal on the table now is that anyone that makes over $1 million would not be able to be eligible for those lower preferential rates. Their capital gains would be subject now to that 39.6%. So let me give you an example. I'm a CEO, I'm an executive, I earn $900,000 of compensation. I also sold some stock in a business that generated $200,000 of income. So my total income for the year is $1.1 million. Regularly, that $200,000 of capital gain would be subject to 20% federal rates. But under this proposal, the first $100,000 would be subject to 20%. That $100,000 that put me over the $1 million mark would be subject to 39.6. Next bullet point, there's changes to the Section 1031 exchanges. This is when you've got real estate for investment or rental purposes. You want to do a like-kind exchange. That is, you sell it for another property, but you immediately invest in another piece of real estate. This 1031 is a mechanism that allows you to defer gain. Well, the proposal on the table would be that originally anyone making over $400,000 would not be eligible for this 1031 like-kind exchange. Now the Green Book is reporting that, well, we will allow you to have that 1031 exchanges, but no gains to exceed $500,000 or $1 million if you're married filing jointly. So, lastly, the administration, and this is not in the Green Book, has proposed that the Section 199, this is that 20% deduction that you get automatically as a freebie when you own a pass-through, an interest in an LLC, or a sole proprietor. You automatically get this 20% deduction. There's obviously rules around it, but that is potentially going to be taken off the table. So let's talk about business changes, proposed tax law changes for businesses. So there's potentially payroll tax changes right now. Right now, when an employee is subject to Social Security up until they hit approximately $142,000. So for those of you that get a W-2, you'll notice that when your wages hit about $142,000, last year it was about $138,000, Social Security stopped being withheld from your paycheck. Well, the proposal is that would still be the case until you hit $400,000 of income. There's also some proposals around S corporation, self-employment. I won't get into that, but the big piece here is that the C Corp rate is going to go from 21 to 28%. So when we layer on an additional 5% or so for state corporate income taxes, we're sitting at 33% overall, right, which is going to put us a little bit higher than the G7 in terms of that. But again, we'll see what happens there. Let's see. I think in the interest of time, we'll keep going there. There's some changes there. Let's, Peyton, how much time do I have? Am I okay on time? Okay, great. Okay. So we do have some time here. So the next one is the estate and gift changes. So right now, anyone in life can gift property without a gift tax, or in death, transfer that to their heirs up to a limit of $11.7 million. That's called the lifetime gift and estate exclusion. So if you gift more than that, or if you transfer through death through inheritance more than that 11.7, then anything over that lifetime gift and estate exclusion will be subject to either gift tax if you're alive or estate tax in death. And the tax rate right now is currently 40%. So the proposal now would be to reduce that 11.7 million lifetime gift and estate exclusion to 2009 levels, which was about $3.5 million. Of course, right now the 11.7 million is set to sunset in 2026 anyway, but it goes down to $5 million. And further, the estate tax rate will go from 40% up to 45%. So there's a lot of planning happening right now as a result of these changes, right? The increase in the estate tax rate from 40 to 45 and the reduction of that lifetime gift and estate exclusion. So as we've got a lot of entrepreneurs here that, maybe a lot of the value of their current portfolios tied up in the stock of their business, right? The value of that business is going to go into the calculation of what is included in that lifetime gift and estate exclusion. The last bullet point is that you've got the elimination of the step up in basis when you inherit something. Meaning, if someone inherits a piece of property, your basis gets stepped up to fair market value. So an inheritor could immediately sell an asset after they inherited it and have no gain because it got stepped up to fair market value. The proposal would be they would get rid of that step up in basis at death. All right, let's go to equity compensation. Let's talk about it in terms of a C corporation, right? And I've listed here what are the common types of stock-based compensation, and I just want to hit on really the first two, right? The first two are stock options and restricted stock grants or restricted stock units. So a C corporation wants to retain or it wants to incentivize certain key employees, so it issues stock compensation to align interests, right? Shareholders and employees want to achieve the same thing. We want to increase EBITDA. We want to increase value. So we do this. And so stock options is the right, but not the requirement, to purchase stock at a certain established price, usually called the stock price, right? For tax purposes, we've got two classifications. And what I want you to remember is that non-qualified stock options are taxable. Incentive stock options are non-taxable. And there's pros and cons to both. So, as you entrepreneurs get into this, it's nice to be aware of the true tax consequences of these. Then the second option was this restricted stock grants or restricted stock units, right? That's just generally a straight grant of stock. Sometimes they have vesting requirements based on time or based on performance or whatever the case may be. And there's obviously tax consequences on those. Let's see. Let's go this. I think the last thing I wanted to cover before we open it up is in the LLC context, there's really two options in terms of equity-based compensation. LLCs have membership units legally, and so owners of an LLC are unit holders. But for tax purposes, those could be classified as what we call capital interests or profits interests. And what I want you to remember here is generally the issuance of capital interests is a taxable event. The issuance of profits interests is a non-taxable event. Profits interest really is a grant of equity, but you're only entitled to the future value or future profit from the date of grant going forward, and that's why it's not a taxable event there. So I think in the interest of time, let's stop there, Yuki, and open it up to questions.
Yeah, two questions. Did you say at first you are a C corp yourself?
I am, so I'm a partner at Squire, and Squire is organized as an S corporation. Yep.
Question for those on the 1202, section 1202.
There we go. On the 1202 section, I just wanted to know on that one because it's very interesting about the benefits. I like the benefits on that one. Is it a one-time after that 5-year holding period? Once each time after 5 years is over, you can do that again and again up to the 10 million, or can you do it in multiple different ways, structuring your corporation so you can do it with different investments, meeting that 10 million point? Am I making sense on that?
Yeah.
Or is it just so. I do it one time for 5 years, sell off, take that tax free, and then do it again for 5 years, or can you kind of loop those in together and stagger them, or how does that work?
Yeah. So maybe let me just summarize the question: is that $10 million exclusion on the sale of 1202 stock? Is it a one-time thing? Can I do it multiple times? How does it work? Let me just elaborate on that. And so you could hold multiple tranches of 1202 stock, right? So if you say, hey, I've got $1 million that I'm going to invest in this C Corp, it qualifies as 1202, right? I hold on to that for 5 years, I sell it, and I get the $10 million on that. And then I had another investment in another 1202 stock, I can do the same thing. So it just depends on that tranche of 1202 stock. I think to your point also is there are some rules that if you do liquidate without that holding period, but you invest in additional qualified small business stock, you just roll it into this new investment and you wouldn't have to recognize the gain on that. That makes sense?
So it's basically just that stock, that individual stock. You can have 100 stocks up to that $10 million.
Yeah, correct. Yep.
Thanks. Okay. So I've always had some confusion over the gifting of money. What would keep an investor from just gifting, up to $3.5 million to a company or a founder of a company, and the investor says, "Oh, I'm just gifting this money to them." Well, what if 5 years later that founder then turns around and says, "I'm just gonna give this guy 30% of the company"?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good question. So that just to repeat it for the scenario, investors gifts to a founder, $3 million for purposes of starting a business, and then later through an exit event, the investor re-gifts some sort of return back to that investor. Is that kind of the fact pattern?
Yeah, but kind of like in a way that's shady.
Yeah. No, yeah, good question, right? The IRS has a tool in it, or an arrow in its quiver that would say, hey, we're going to use substance over form, right? In that scenario, it looked like even though maybe transactionally or legally the investor gifted to the founder, and then the founder gifted it back at the end, it smells and looks like a return on stock, and the IRS could use that substance over form or step transaction doctrine to recharacterize that as, hey, this looks like an investment in a startup and then a return after a sale type of thing. Transactionally you could potentially structure it, but you would be, I think that there would be some significant concerns by your tax advisor in that situation. Okay. I think we are out of time. So.
Okay, let's give it up for Yuki and Joe. Thanks, you guys. Really appreciate that. So whether you're an LLC, C Corp, or S Corporation, you should have really important, valuable takeaways from today's workshop, and we really appreciate our partnership with Squire and our friendship with Joe and all the work that Yuki and Joe put into today. So thank you. All right, so let's invite our Bree Ray up to the stage, our digital marketing director here at RevRoad, and she will introduce our guest's featured founder.
Hello, welcome back to Review. Glad to have you here. We are going to just jump right in today. Growing up in an entrepreneurial family, Brad Bonham had influential examples of leadership and management that fueled his passions. He has spent 15 years of his career owning and running businesses. Now, as co-founder of Walker Edison, on track to do about $800 million this year. Bonham supports several charities, teaches college-level courses, and was voted 2021 CEO of the Year for Utah. So give a warm welcome to Brad Bonham.
Thanks, Pri. That was very nice.
Welcome. We're glad to have you. let's just jump right in. Talk to me about your entrepreneurial spirit. Where did your passion for entrepreneurship and business come from?
From a really young age, I've just been fascinated with online home furnishings. And it was like, what do you want to do when you get older? I want to be a furniture salesman. And that's really what I told everybody.
Very passionate about
literally
that.
has not, no, I'm completely lying. I grew up in a home where my father, I never saw him work for anybody else my entire life. And so I was born actually right here at BYU. And then we moved when I was an infant to California, and he started his first business out there. His father before him, entrepreneur. His father before him, entrepreneur. And so when somebody would ask me, hey, what do you want to do when you grow up? It's like, hey, I want to run my own thing. And so in the summers, I would go work at my dad's business. He would take me to negotiations, meetings. I mean, I feel like I had a bit of like an MBA as a teenager, just kind of watching how he ran things and how he would run his business and his business partners and how they all interacted. And so that's like growing up in that kind of an environment, it was like, hey, what do you want to do? I want to start my own thing.
So it really was just kind of in the bloodline. You were born into it. It was meant to be.
It was meant to be. I mean, look, my dad had a great deal of success in a number of his businesses, and others failed. And it was kind of a good learning lesson, for me as a young man growing up in that environment. Really kind of gave me a heads up onto what to expect as I embarked on my own thing.
So you may or may not have had a passion for furniture at a young age, but when did the idea for Walker Edison formulate?
So it was when I was in college. I worked for Coldwell Banker Commercial here. I was doing real estate for a guy named Brandon Fugel. Was one of my mentors. I had side hustles always going on. Okay, like always, there was always some side hustle that I was trying to get in. I was a big car guy growing up. I had, during college, I had this old Toyota 4Runner that I had modified myself. I took the wheels and tires off of this car, listed them on eBay, and they sold in like a day for like $600. And I was like, oh, wow, cool. That's, $600 I didn't have before. And then I went to KSL.com and I looked, and there was like 6 other sets of those same exact wheels and tires, and they were all asking like $200. So I took my $600, I bought as many as I could, relisted them on eBay, sold them all for the same dollar amount, and like pretty soon I'm like this like tire and wheel like expert, and I have my entire garage filled with like random tires and wheels. And I'm selling all of these things on eBay, and to this day I have like hundreds of these wheels and tire transactions on my eBay account, and it's so weird. They're like, "What are you doing for money?" I'm like, "Well, I sell wheels and tires on eBay." Like no one says that, right? But I was doing it. The biggest problem with selling wheels and tires on eBay, and what I started to notice was the shipping cost of those wheels and tires was killing some of my sales. They're like, "Hey, I'm paying $500 for the wheels and tires, but it cost me $300 or $400 to ship them out to me in Florida, so I'm just not going to buy them." And so I started thinking, I'm like, what can I resell as a side hustle to that costs a lot less to actually ship? And I landed on watches. I was always a watch guy. I always had like a cool watch. They were and so I again kind of went to KSL. I joined every single online watch forum. I actually became a certified, and I forget what the designation is. Like I am a certified jeweler. Okay, like I don't even know if my wife knows that. Did you know I'm a jeweler? Yeah, I am. And so I had, I joined all these different wholesale clubs and everything else, and I started keeping track really closely in Excel spreadsheets, models of watches, what their movements even were, and how that drove value. And then I started keeping track of sales prices across the internet. And so anytime one of these watches would come up in a local classifieds or anywhere that I could really get it, I knew ahead of time whether I could make money on that or not. My whole goal was like, let's reduce risk. Like, I don't want to guess if I can make money on something. I want to know ahead of time that I can make money on something. And so I had this like superior information data set that, to my knowledge, nobody else really in my space. I mean, certainly there were people monitoring those things, but it gave me an advantage compared to everybody else in that little market, when I went on eBay to go sell things.
So from tires to watches.
Yes.
And then to furniture.
Yes. So I was selling. We had bought a small business that did those gift in a balloon things. Have you guys ever seen those stuffed animals that go inside balloons and whatever? Like, so that was me in college at a certain point. I was looking for product expansion. Sourced some product out of China. They were like wicker gift baskets, right? And I'm like, hey, I'm already selling this gift and balloon product into Walmart retail stores. What else can I sell? And my buyer that I was working with was like, well, hey, we need some more gift products. And so I sourced these baskets. I went over to the Canton Fair. We had like, the problem with selling baskets is that these baskets are like, cost you $1 and you sell them for $2, right? And you're like, oh, that's a cool profit margin. But I've got to sell millions of these things. Like, inventory was a nightmare. I had to move a ton of them to make any money. And I thought to myself, I need something at a higher price point so I don't have to sell as many, but I liked the margin profile. And so that was kind of, I went to the Canton Fair in southern China. I saw a TV stand that I had recently purchased from Best Buy for $250. I walked up to the lady and I said, hey, how much is that? And she said, it's $28. And so in my mind, it was like light bulb, right? Because I knew what I was looking for from a margin and pricing perspective. I just didn't know what product it was going to be. And so, purchased a container kind of on a whim, brought it in, drove to overstock.com. If you guys haven't dealt with overstock.com, they are a phenomenal group of people to work with. I knocked on the door. I said, hey, I have a TV stand. Would you like to buy it? And she's like, well, we probably do. This doesn't happen anymore. This was like 15 years ago. Like, we all carried guns around on our belts 15 years ago and, dueled in the street, right? Like, this was like a long, long time ago, it feels like, in the world of e-com. A guy named Mike Hoy from Overstock.com comes down. He was the head of merchandising. He said, this is exactly what we're looking for. I'm going to teach you how to drop ship. And he handed me the vendor paperwork. And that's how Walker Edison started.
That's incredible. And honestly, you learned so many things along the way that set you up to be ready for the opportunity, which I think is great. So talk to me about what were the hard times at the beginning of Walker Edison? What were the challenges?
Yeah, I live in a little bit of like an unsexy space. Like investors call you and they're like, hey, we saw that you were on the Utah Business Fast 50 list. It's like the 4th year in a row you've made that list. What are you doing? And I'm like, I sell furniture on the internet. They're like, oh, and like, we want tech companies that don't make any money. I'm like, well, then, I happen to make money, so maybe you don't like me. You know what I mean? like, and so, look, I would say cash was always a concern. As an entrepreneur, it was like, look, my wife and I got married, and the very first week, my power got shut off at our little townhome. That we didn't have that, like, how do you pay the bills conversation before we got married. And I remember Megan coming in, and she grabbed this, like, when you get the power shut off, that means for many, many, many months, they've notified you that you haven't paid the power bill. And then they come to your house and they put this huge yellow sticker across the door, and all your neighbors can see it, and it says, you are a delinquent power payer, okay? Like, it's very embarrassing. And so my wife went to go open up the garage door. Garage door doesn't work because my power's been shut off. She drives out to me at Walker Edison. I think I only had like 5 employees at the time. It was also very embarrassing for me because she had taken the sign off the door, comes in, slams it on the desk, and she's like, hey, like, what's your deal? I just married a bum, like, why aren't you paying the power bill? Anyway, cash was always a concern. I had to prioritize what bills I paid, and it was like, I wonder how long it will take the power company to shut off my power. I found out, like, it was a proof of concept, okay? Like, it was like 4 months, by the way, so don't do this. Yeah.
4 months, okay, just to take a mental note. Great.
Cash was always a concern for us, though.
So within the first 10 years, though, you did not do any capital raises.
We did not take a single dime.
So how did you do that, and what was the thought process behind that decision? Behind that decision.
Yeah, we're not the only company in Utah that's done that. If you guys have heard of a company called Qualtrics, Ryan Smith and his brothers didn't take a dime for the first 10 years of their business either. We had a desire to maintain control of our company. The early days of the internet, no one really understood. It wasn't like I could go hire an executive with 25 years of experience to run my e-com dropshipping business, because e-com dropshipping had only been around for a couple of years when I started the company. And so we were in a space that no one understood. We were in a space that was kind of unsexy, even though margins were awesome and we made a bunch of money doing it. So in a way, we wanted to bootstrap, but also we couldn't really raise money. like nobody wanted to put money into our business. I actually remember a couple of meetings where we had some kind of marquee names in the Salt Lake Valley that came in, and they said, "We see no potential in your business, and you will amount to nothing." And I'm like, I don't like this meeting very much. Like this is not, thank you for coming, but please don't come back. Kind of a thing. It was hard for us to hear because we knew what we had. We saw numbers going from 10,000 a month to 100,000 a month to $1 million a month, and it happened relatively quickly. And we're like, how does no one else see this? And fortunately for us, nobody else saw it because it allowed us to have that first mover advantage in our space.
So then came Operation Moneyball, yes?
Yes.
So talk to me about Operation Moneyball. What is it, first of all, and why did it work so well?
So first of all, for any of the entrepreneurs listening here today, I hope if you take one thing from this, I want to kind of tell you what really revolutionized our business. If you've seen Operation Moneyball, it's with a gentleman named Brad Pitt. Often people will be like, "Are you Brad Pitt?" No, I'm not Brad Pitt. Like,
that was
we look
my
the
first
same.
thought.
Yes, we look exactly the same body type. We were having meetings. This is like 8-9 years into the business. Okay, we were at about 18 million in revenue, if I remember correctly, and 20% EBITDA margin. So on $18 million in revenue, we were making $3.5 million a year. Of that 3.5, we took every single penny and rolled it back into increased inventory purchases. Okay, so there was no lifestyle, there was no anything else. My power was getting shut off. Like we had to make choices individually so that we could continue to grow the business through retained earnings. We were having meetings with major accounts, Walmart.com, Wayfair.com, Amazon.com, and they were like, wow, you get really good reviews on your product. You ship extremely quickly. If you guys send an order to me, I acknowledge it, pick it, pack it, and send it within 2 hours. And 15 years ago, this is like unheard of, right? And now it's kind of an expectation because Amazon Prime has done this to us. These meetings went something like this. You ship it really well, it arrives undamaged, great reviews, people like your product, but you are out of stock all of the time, Walker Edison. Like, why can't you guys stay in stock on stuff? The demand was insatiable for our product. Matt and I, my business partner, Matt Davis, that started the business with me, we went back to our office and we said, how out of stock are we? So our inventory ordering process went like this. We'd get a call from the warehouse. They'd say, we ran out of stock. And we'd say, maybe we should order more. And that was like the complexity of our inventory management system, and you're like, how did this guy ever survive? I don't know is the answer. Pure luck. So we went, if you've seen the movie Moneyball with Brad Pitt plays Billy Beane of the Oakland Athletics. He's the general manager of the A's. So he makes a lot of kind of the managerial decisions around who they hire for their baseball players, who they acquire. And Billy Beane turns the Oakland A's organization into a purely data-driven enterprise. There's a very famous scene where he's sitting around the table with his scouting organization, and they're saying, man, I like that guy's arm, or I like the way that guy hits, or whatever. And Brad Pitt asks, one, can we afford them? And they say no. And he says, well, what the heck are we talking about then? And it boiled down to Billy Beane figured out what the KPIs were around his players that actually win ball games. And it boiled down to simple things like walks and hits. Like, not the guy that always hits a 500-foot home run, but it's the guy that gets on base the most. I think on-base percentage, OBP, was like one of their key KPIs. If you are on base more than the other team, the likelihood of you scoring more runs than your opponent increases dramatically, right? Like, it makes logical sense, but everybody in those days was more like, that guy throws hard, or that guy hits a lot of home runs, and there wasn't a lot of like data behind the actual decision-making that was made. Matt and I stopped and we said, what wins the game for us? Like, what KPIs do we need to monitor? And it really boiled down to, you're out of stock too much. When you're out of stock as an e-com dropshipper, your product comes off site, you lose page rank so that you're not found as much, and then it takes months worth of being in stock to build that page rank back up. And so for the very first time in our career at Walker Edison, we said, how out of stock are we, and how much money do we need in an infusion of capital to be in stock more often? And then what do we think that'll do to sales?
And what did it do to sales?
So we went out, we found a group in Salt Lake, they're called Black Oak Capital Partners. We borrowed $3 million. In a high growth environment, selling equity is way more expensive than borrowing money, like infinitely more. We knew that we could be that billion-dollar enterprise, and we only valued it, $20 million. And it's like, I don't want to give up half my business just for $3 million, whatever the equation amounted to. So we borrowed $3 million. Of that $3 million, we put every penny of it into. Is this not working? All right. Can you guys hear me better? So of that $3 million, we put every penny into the inventory that our Operation Moneyball told us that we should be in stock on more often.
So from that point, you were then chatting with investors, yes?
Yeah.
Had you before?
So that $3 million came in. The inventory blew through. We actually paid off that $3 million in 2 quarters. So it took us about 6 months, and the money that we had made from that inventory spend allowed us to pay off the debt immediately, quickly. So we had a passive shareholder in the business. The business had become fairly valuable at that point, and we wanted to buy our passive shareholder out. And so that was the first time that we really explored kind of how do we do that, and where do we go to get the funds to buy that person out.
So when you have a relationship with an investor, what is your preference on how that relationship works and what it looks like?
I think it's kind of an interesting question, and I think it has to do with the lifestyle and maybe kind of or the life cycle of your business, and really what you want out of the business, right? And so for us, because our industry was so nascent, there weren't a lot of value add private equity groups. We just knew we needed more capital to grow. And so for us, it was like, can we get the capital? The answer was yes. And then 2, who do we partner with that won't disrupt us and say, man, you guys really need to open up your own brick and mortar stores, And it's like, no, we don't, because we're really good at e-com. That's where we want to focus. And so it was like, can we get the right deal? And then can we get the right partner that will just support us, not try to run our business and take over and kind of make us focus on things that don't make sense to us.
So as young entrepreneurs are going and looking for capital to raise, what advice do you have for them during that process?
Yeah, it kind of needs to align with your objectives. I see too many founders selling way too much too early in the process. And so proof of concept is key. I'm now an investor in a bunch of these businesses, and in fact, a business that's part of RevRoad. If you've proven the concept and you just need cash to grow, that's different than let's hope this works out. And so I would just advise you, look, you don't want a board packed full of financial people that have just put money into your business. You are the founder. You had the vision. You know what you want. Stick to it. Find somebody that believes in you and your vision, that's willing to put their hard-earned capital dollars behind you so that you can go execute and carry out that vision. I can tell you right now, I'll use Qualtrics again. Had they sold 60% of their business in the first 2 years of Qualtrics, I don't know if Qualtrics would exist today, because they would have lost the ability to control the direction that business went. And I'm looking at myself as well and saying, hey, we knew what we wanted. We knew what we thought we knew how to get there. Find somebody that supports that vision.
It's been a very clear part of what I would say your personal brand, that you care about people and especially your employees. Will you talk to me a little bit about your employee appreciation policies and how you really infuse employee appreciation into the entire culture of Walker Edison?
So I'm going to tell you kind of a funny story. So I taught college. I'm not a college graduate. I was sitting in Asian art history at the University of Utah, and I was getting text messages from my employees at Walker Edison. And I remember standing up in the middle of class, closing my book, and saying, I'm going to go run Walker Edison. And so I was a senior at the University of Utah. Fast forward a couple years later, I was actually asked to come back and teach kind of some entrepreneurship classes, and they asked me, hey, you need to come up with like a grading rubric. You need to come up with, like a syllabus and stuff. And I'm like, well, look, either they get a product out of China, which was the class I was teaching, or they don't. So I'm either going to give them an A or I'm going to give them an F. To like academics, like that's pretty shocking, right? They're like, well, what if they get a C? I'm like, well, did they get the product or did they not? And like it was very. So, I bring this story up because, like, what business, a lot of these business classes teach, they're like, you need to come up with a business plan, you need to come up with the core values, you need to come up with like these things that I will tell you, you don't know what your business, like, often I'll see entrepreneurs come up with their business plan, and within the first week, they've torn it to shreds because they've figured so much out in that first week or month or year that their business plan has just changed. We didn't have core values like assigned to our business until a year and a half ago. So I'm 14 years in, right? I go to my employees and I say, what do you guys think the core, based on how we've run this business in our lives within Walker Edison, what do you feel like our core values would be? And I left it to everybody to come up with what our core values were. And they came up with 9, and I'm not going to go through each one, but the number one core value that they had learned at their time at Walker Edison was we give. It's a play on Walker Edison, right? So we give. And that is the thread that has bound our organization together, is that our employees, we pay them, and certainly they volunteer to give back to the community that we feel like has made us so successful.
I love that, and I think it really speaks to the type of people who also work at Walker Edison as well. And I love that they were included in selecting those values. Talk to me about a major influence in your career. Who was an incredible mentor and influence for you?
I mean, I've mentioned my father today. I mean, he certainly kind of set me on the path of being an entrepreneur, but I idolized people. I'll bring up somebody like Larry H. Miller, okay? Have you guys ever read his biography? So Larry Miller, you should read it if you haven't. There's one thing that stands out. He worked harder than everybody else. At the end of the day, if his competitors were working 40 hours, he worked 80. And if his competitors were working 50, he worked 100. And you just do some simple math, and that guy's going to get more done, and maybe become less effective. Maybe there's like attrition with what your output looks like over time. But you do that year in, year out for 20, 30, 40 years, you're going to accomplish more than what your competitors are accomplishing. I mentioned working for Coldwell Banker and Brandon Fugel when I was in college. Brandon was a highly successful, in fact, he served an LDS mission. He closed 2 real estate deals while on his mission. It's like this famous like story. He's like, I paid for my mission on my mission, and he smuggled like one of those old brick cell phones into the mission and like closed these deals. And anyway, yeah, if you ever run across him, have him tell you that story. But I wanted to emulate the success that I saw in some of these other people. And so I spent a great deal of time studying what they did. So recently there's a book about Phil Knight called Shoe Dog. Like if you're an aspiring entrepreneur, find those businesses or those people that you find to be really inspirational, or at least the results of their efforts are something that you want to emulate. Find out how they did it. Find out how they got there. Find out what their work ethic looked like, what the lucky breaks were, what the hardships were that they had to go through, and learn those lessons before you even get to them, so that when you do encounter those bumps in the road, you're like, hey, Phil Knight had to go through that same thing when he started Nike. Let's look and see what he did, and there have been roadmaps that have laid before us that you can rely on and try to emulate so that you don't have to go through those same difficulties.
Well, while we have you here, of all your ventures and experiences selling watches and tires, and of all the places that you've been, what is one of the greatest lessons that you have learned?
So proof of concept is key. So my aspiring entrepreneurs, in my class, my class's goal, whether you got an A or an F, right? Like it was pretty binary in my class that I taught. I taught for 5.5 years, entrepreneurship. You got an A if you got product for free from a different country. Okay, so I taught people how to produce in other countries, and they had to get the product for free. because my whole thing was like, we're not going to take any risk in this class. Okay, the only risk that we're going to take is the time you spend, because if you don't have any money, what else can you do? Well, you can work at it. And so I had a whole bunch of students that proved these concepts without having to outlay any cash. I remember one of my students said, hey, I like those skinny neckties, those floral skinny neckties that I see all these younger people wearing. Like, I'm old, and so I wear like these big, like paisley, like ones that everybody makes fun of me for. But apparently these skinny, like floral neckties, like that's the cool thing to wear. He found 3 different factories that were willing to send him for free 100 ties each in different variants. He took each of those, he sold them for, I forget what it was, 20 or 30 or 40 bucks, took all that cash, rolled them into the next order. Like this was no risk, guys. Like he used that product that was sent to him to buy future orders. And if you work hard enough, the risk goes down. If you're smart about things, like if you have no capital, approach any of these situations as an aspiring entrepreneur. I have no money. How do I still achieve my goal? And so that's really key.
For a lot of entrepreneurs, we're in an interesting time of excitement as entrepreneurs are jumping on new opportunities and markets that have opened up since last year. And we also have entrepreneurs who are kind of picking themselves up after a really, really hard year. So what opportunities do you see? What silver linings are there for those who are either picking themselves up or entering the race?
Well, first of all, the last year has been unprecedented. So in 41 years of my life, like I've never experienced anything like the last year. Certainly those people like me who were pure play e-com, we benefited greatly. Those who were in kind of a brick and mortar setting for half the year last year, you were toast. I mean, your stores just shut down. I would just give this advice. If we could enter our time machine and go back 18 months, what would you do differently based on what you know today? And let me give you some examples. I would have started a mask company, okay? PPE, all right? There have been billions of masks sold in the last 18 months. Had any of you worn a face mask prior to 18 months ago? Like, I hadn't, if you could go back in time and replay that situation, I would have stocked up. I would have filled warehouses with toilet paper, okay? And you're like, wow, if I had gone to an investor and I'm like, we need to invest in toilet paper, they would have been like, no, I think that's not something we want to put our money in. And in hindsight, you could have made millions and millions and millions of dollars on toilet paper, masks, protective things. I know that a bunch of these like local distilleries turned into like, the hand sanitizer stuff, like that's real entrepreneurial. Like, okay, how can we capitalize on what's currently happening in the market? And I think there's opportunities to learn from each one of these situations so that you can put your business in a position to excel the next time a COVID comes around, or next time, like I'm dealing with terrible ocean freight issues right now. Like, what can we learn from these situations and then apply them to our businesses so that the next time this happens, because there will be a next time. It might not be COVID, it might be something else, but there will be a next time. So how do you position your business to take advantage of those climates when they come our way?
Before we open it up for audience questions, what is a principle that you use to guide your career?
So I do think life is really short. I think money comes and goes. Hopefully it doesn't go too quickly. But I hear a lot of entrepreneurs come to me and they're like, hey, invest in my business. When I make a ton of money, when I'm rich, I'm going to give back a ton to the community. And let me just stop you like right there. You can give back today. When we started Walker Edison, one of the very first things we did is we said, no matter what happens, we're going to try to do good in the community. And so we called the Utah Food Bank, and Matt, my partner, and I, we stopped unloading the containers. We stopped taking customer service calls. We went for 4 hours. I think it was like week 2 of Walker Edison. We went for 4 hours, and we boxed up food at the Utah Food Bank. We had no money, by the way. We had like 23 cents in our checking account. We went and boxed up food for the food bank. I very quickly joined the board of the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Like, I actually didn't join the board. Megan told me we were going to be Make-A-Wish wish granters. That requires no money. Call Make-A-Wish Utah today. If you haven't, look back over your last 12 months of your life. If you're that inspiring entrepreneur that so badly wants to give back in the future, once your business makes it, start today. Like, you don't need $1 billion to go do good in the world. You need time and you need a desire. So I don't think people can just go from uncharitable to charitable once they have $1 billion. You know what I mean? Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. We are going to open it up for audience questions now. So if you have a question, please raise your hand. As a reminder, we will run a microphone to you and hold it in front of you, so no need to touch it. But the time is yours.
So I'm really interested in your bootstrapping. I don't want to get a bunch of money right now. I want to self-float for a while.
Yeah, that's great.
So the biggest question that I have is the inventory. So I'm trying to map it out myself. You have so many clients. You fill those orders. Then they reorder. So my products will go about 2 months. So those first batch of orders go out. Month 2, nothing. Month 3, they'll be reordering. At the same time, you're acquiring new clients. How does that cash flow look like to be purchasing more product so you satisfy your original audience while you're capturing more?
So what it almost sounds like is you have a demand, like you have plenty of demand for your product. It's like, how do I stay in stock?
Yeah, I haven't even like blown it up marketing because I need to capture this dance first.
Yep.
Before I get into what you went through, out of stock.
So this is like the classic inventory problem that we all have, right? Like when we're a consumer products business, it's how do I stay in stock? Because your inventory is going to suck up cash, right? Like there's a cash flow problem. When I mentioned one of our biggest challenges, I mean, it's still a challenge today, right? Like I've $140 million of inventory across 7 warehouses in the United States right now. It has always been a problem for us managing that. We chose to just use the money that we were able to earn from our business to fund the inventory that we sold to clients. And so this is where as entrepreneurs we get to make that decision, right? Do I go out? Do I borrow money? Do I put it on my credit card? Do I take equity? Do I bring on an investor? And it's kind of a choice that we have to make. I would just tell you this, set really clear expectations with your customers. What customers don't love is when they find out 3 weeks after they've ordered that you're still a month and a half out, right? But what I have found is, and this happens in a lot of different consumer products businesses, I recently interviewed a couple of female founders of a business that's doing about $10 million a year in revenue, and they've been really good at communicating the expectation of when that inventory will arrive in their customers' hands. And just by being clear, like, bad news is going to be bad news no matter when you hear it, okay? But if you hear it up front, there's a certain trust factor that happens with your customers and you as the entrepreneur. And when you deliver on that timeline, they're like, I know I can trust this person with future orders. So I would say just communication is probably super, critical with what you're trying to do. And then just balancing. That's like the balancing act. And this is where businesses either succeed or fail. And that's why I think communication is so critical. Either you go borrow money, you raise money, or you just use the money that you're earning from your business to order as much as you feel safe ordering so you can fill those future orders. Yeah.
Hey, Brad. So I'm really interested in your success, but I'm more interested in your failures because, as we all know, it's a long road to success, right? So my question is, and not to call you out or anything, but my question is, what would you say is like your personal weakness when it comes to business, and what do you do to like overcome it or turn it into a strength?
So I've never actually failed at anything. So
okay. So
yeah, no. You are 100% correct. I was actually talking about this with my wife on the way up. I'm like, I'm going to give this speech, and it's going to sound like we've just crushed from day one, and holy cow, we've made every right choice everywhere. Let me give you an example. We were selling a bunch of product through these e-commerce marketplaces, we saw our brick and mortar friends. So brick and mortar retailers in our space make 50%. If they buy a product for 100, they're selling it for 200. If they buy a product for 500, they're selling it for 1,000. We saw a lot of potential margin expansion if we were the retailer, right? And so we kind of believe in like failing and failing fast. This took a little bit longer to fail, and it was very painful. We opened up like 6 brick and mortar locations along the Wasatch Front, and it was selling patio furniture. Okay, it was called Oasis Patio. We hired a whole bunch of these kids that usually go out and knock doors selling pest control, but that's like a brutal job, and we're like, well, come sell patio furniture. It's so much more fun. And we aligned that strategy with this seasonal patio furniture initiative. Well, it snowed until June 15th of that year. Like snow through June 15th. No one buys patio furniture when it's snowing outside, okay? Because you can't even go sit on it. We lost $1.5 million that summer. It almost took the entire business down with it. But we learned really quickly, like, stick with what you're really good at. Our business was growing 40% a year through e-com marketplaces. We attempted to gain more margin by becoming like this brick and mortar retailer. We learned really quickly, 1, we're not equipped with that. 2, it's really hard to drive people to your stores when they've never heard of you before, versus like Ashley Furniture or RC Willey locally. Like, those are institutions that have name ID that have been around for 50 years. Like, in order for us to gain that kind of name ID, either you have to pay for it, or you just got to kind of, work on that brand, for years and years and years. We learned we're really good at e-com. That's what we decided to focus on from that point forward. Yeah. Yes. Do we have microphones?
So you talked a lot about how you learned a lot about entrepreneurship from a lot of these side hustles when you were younger. What are some of the lessons that you learned as you were growing up that helped you succeed not only with the side hustles but also overall with your long-term success?
Yeah, that's a good question. So 1, I refused to go into debt for the side hustle, right? Like, I wanted the side hustle. Interestingly, my side hustles revolved around things that I knew a lot about and that I really liked. So it was like cars, watches. I tried golf clubs for a little bit. That's actually a terrible industry with really low margins. So don't do that. Just go play golf. Don't try to sell golf. For me, it was like I didn't want to quit my day job until the dollars usurped what I was making in that day job, right? So even with Walker Edison, it was like we didn't move full-time into Walker Edison until the dollars were there that would support us moving over. So it was, again, I'm like a big proponent of avoiding risk at all costs. If you can justify moving over because your side hustle has turned into something that will sustain you financially, cool, then move over. But like, don't quit your day job until you've proven that. You know what I mean? That was kind of my number 1 takeaway.
So then how do you balance your time? If you have the day job, you're trying to do the side hustle at the same time, how do you separate that?
Yeah, I also had a wife and 3 kids, and like, I didn't even talk about them. This is like the worst interview ever, you know what I mean? Like, so work was my passion. It was my hobby. When I talked about emulating people that I found to be very successful, Larry H. Miller, Brandon Fugel, like they really loved what they were doing, right? So they loved the hustle. They loved overcoming these challenges. Like one of the key differentiators between people that I've seen that have been really successful and people that are not is the people that are not give up. Like, they stop at a certain point. And it's like, look, if your idea was good when you started it, it's still probably good today. Just because somebody told you no, like, I don't want to carry your product in my stores, or whatever the case may be, and you're all disheartened and so you stop, yeah, you're never going to succeed. It's the men and women that hear the no and they don't take it. They're like, absolutely not. You need my product. Let me tell you why. Or, okay, if you don't want it, I'm going to go to the guy down the street, and I promise you they're going to want it, you know? And you just knock door after door after door after door until you get that break. Like, do not stop. Never, ever, ever quit. That, to me, is like the difference between those entrepreneurs that make it and those that do not.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brad. Curious from your perspective, what do you see are kind of the future storm clouds that either create opportunities or things that you kind of want to avoid?
So what's really interesting is that tax conversation. Like, I feel like they're kind of self-deprecating, and I'm like, this is rad, you know, like, this information is so valuable. Like, yeah, you're welcome. Like, and interestingly, like, through being an entrepreneur, like, I knew most of the information that they put up on the screen. So, storm clouds, okay? The U.S. economy's backbone is built on small business. Like, if you actually look at the data and like what drives our economy, small business of like businesses 50 employees or less, it's like the vast majority of like our GDP is like put out through these businesses, right? And this is me, this is you, this is other people. We were only able to grow Walker Edison through retained earnings. I worry that in an environment where taxes go up dramatically, I feel like that's disincentivizing to growth for small businesses. And so I worry about it. Businesses that are big and established like mine, we can absorb a 7%. What are taxes going up? 7%? What'd you say they were? Yeah, so 28 for C Corp. Like I can absorb that. Small business often cannot. So I'm worried about that. I will tell you right now, we live in an interesting inflationary environment. Prices are going up. I gave the largest price increase in 15 years I passed along this year because my ocean freight, I might be going in a little too much detail here, but like, historically, for a 40-foot container to be shipped from any of my factory partners to my door here in Salt Lake was $4,200. Spot rates as of last week were $18,000 for one container. And even then, it's taking 2.5 times as long to come into our country. And so these are real headwinds that we're having to deal with as consumer products businesses. Those will eventually solve. I do worry government can influence our life. Like, I'm really involved kind of behind the scenes. I sit on the Governor's Office of Economic Development Board. I'm on the World Trade Center of Utah board. Like, I really enjoy public policy because I think policy that's created by politicians has a direct effect on our lives here. So I would encourage every one of us actually to be involved and to make our voices heard. But those are some of the things that I kind of worry about, right? Like global macro issues that may negatively affect us as entrepreneurs.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. So this has been great, Brad. Really appreciate it. And I'm going to ask you 2 questions. One, you alluded for a minute there about buying out one of your investors. And I wanted to see if you could add some more color to that. And then I'm going to give you a great segue after that to telling us a little bit more about Megan and your kids.
Okay. So our very first few containers that came in, you had a choice. For me, and we're talking about money and funding inventory purchases, I asked my dad if he could fund those first few containers. So he did, and he became an owner in the business. Those first few containers, and I worked alongside him. He taught me a ton about how to do this, right? Fast forward about 10 years later, he was a passive shareholder in our business. I had been CEO from many years earlier. We paid him back. I think it was like a 30,000% return on those first few containers. It was actually a really fun day for me to pass that money along to him. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. That's a great part of the story. Few days are better than when you can give that kind of return to people who believed in you and others wouldn't.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about Megan and your kids, and how did you prioritize all the things you were working on, all the challenges you were tackling, all the hours you were putting in with family?
There were. Let me be super clear. Like, I would not be where I am today were it not for the support and encouragement of Megan. Anytime I had like a really hard problem that I needed to tackle, it seemed like Megan always had the answer. I'm like, why don't you go do like you're way better at this than I am. Like, why don't you go do this? So that kind of support. I will also say, from a timing perspective in my life, my kids were very little the first decade. I mean, like infants. I've been able to hire some really great people that have allowed me to prioritize my family kind of higher up that chain over the last several years. The first few years as an entrepreneur, if you want to get something done, nobody's going to get it done but you. And so Megan has unloaded containers with me back in my warehouse, right? You remember these containers that we would unload? Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and building furniture. Like, she would come to us with the trade shows, and like she's putting, like, look, if you've ever built ready-to-assemble furniture with those little Allen wrenches, look, we try to make them better than this, but it takes hours to set up an entire showroom, and so me, Megan, Matt, his wife Holly, we would go put these showrooms together, and that's real support that many people don't have, that have certainly led to our success in the business.
Round of applause for that.
Yeah.
For the last question that we always like to ask, what is something fun that your success has allowed you to do?
I will answer that in a couple ways. So one, it has allowed us to amplify I talked about We Give being our number one. Now that I have, hundreds of employees here in our corporate office, we have locations around the globe. Every single person within this organization is bought into this, and it's been really fun it's not just me and Matt boxing food at the food bank, right? You have thousands of people across the globe that pitch in, that are incentivized, by the way. If you join Walker Edison, I give you hours similar to vacation hours where I will pay you for volunteer time off. It's VTO. So I will literally pay you. We track it as a business. Every single month in our all hands, we go over the hours that we have volunteered that month as an organization. And then in my management meetings, I'll call out my sales team and I'll be like, you guys are falling behind on your volunteer hours. Like, let's go. So that's been really fun. I will say, like, my hobbies, I like cars. Brent's right here. Like, we're car people. My vacations in cars have become a little bit nicer than my old Toyota 4Runner. Yeah.
Well, those are great things to celebrate success with. So we are grateful that you have come to be with us today. We're grateful for the knowledge and the wisdom that you shared. And we have a little gift and your official invitation to judge the entrepreneur competition is in there.
I'm in.
Okay,
That's
you heard it here first, folks.
Thank you. Thanks.
Amazing.
All right. Thank you, Bree, and thank you, Brad. That was just fantastic, really insightful, inspirational, and how fun. And I thank you, Megan. Next time we're having you up here on the couch, right? A couple of key takeaways that I took from that was one of the core values that he mentioned. The number one important one was give back, or we give, right? Is that right, Brad? We give. And then the principle ties right into that he shared. Find the people that believe in your vision and that want to support you in that vision. So terrific. That's wonderful. The other piece that he also is missing out that he gave us was 3.5 months. Get your power bill paid, and you should be okay, right? Thanks for testing that for us. All right. Well, thank you again very much. We really appreciate your interview, your story, your sharing today. Really great takeaways. So next up, what we want to do is give a big thank you to our lunch sponsor. Our lunch sponsor comes from a group of friends that have been part of RevRoad community for, I think, since we started, right, Jason? It's been a few years, right? They've rebranded now. Many of us know them as A Design, but they are Crew. Okay. Okay, so it's expanded. That's even better. It's awesome. So what we want to do is share a little video about Crew, and then Carson is going to come up and give us a little bit more information.
Hey Hey, how's it going? Yeah, we can do that. I can get it going. Okay. See ya.
I ain't tryna bring you down, but for real, you might as well give up now. Think you got a chance, but I don't see how. Got a real tight grip when I hold that crown. My life been good and bad and all around. The more things I lost, the more I found. One thing I taught myself to do, no matter the problem, refuse to lose. So, how you want it, man? You can choose. If you can't take the heat, don't light the fuse. See, I walk in slow and ignite the room. Like fire, everything I touch, I consume. I'm getting up while y'all just snooze. While you make breakfast, man, I'm on the move. I'm the first one in and the last one out. Whoever owns the place gotta drag me out. In me I trust, yeah, I smell like success, this Elon Musk, huh? Everybody wanna be like us, we don't stop cause the top just ain't enough, huh? I ain't never gave no fucks, I ain't scared, man, you know black men don't blush, huh? Came here ready to fight on this night, you better just run for your life.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the time. And I first just want to thank RevRoad for putting these on. I've been coming for the last couple months, and honestly, I've learned more coming here than I think high school or college ever taught me. So as I'm going through starting my own businesses and other things that I've been doing in other ventures, it's been a very good help. And I just also want to thank Joe and Yuki for that information about taxes. I mean, as it's very, very important when you're going through these things. And also for Brad, if you do happen to write a book called Tires to Tables in the future, I'd like a percentage of the equity for the use of that title. But to just kind of explain what we do a little bit, as we've learned from all of these people, starting a business is difficult. It takes time. It takes, a lot. It takes a lot of people to do it. And it really does take a lot of assets and a lot of things that you need, from photography to branded merchandising to story to branding to video to photo to graphic design. There's so much that goes in place when starting a business. So what we've done is we've gathered a group of individuals that provides those services and works together for you. And if you are interested in those services, if everyone from the crew could stand up really quick, we're all wearing the same thing, so it's pretty easy to see us in this this small group. But not only can you thank us for lunch today, because we did buy that, it's pretty good. We do like it. Apple's West is great. I mean, I come in here, that's the best part of this place, right? We have free lunch. Anyways, if you do have questions for us, please find us. We have business cards as well. And there is a little bit of a promotion going on where on that business card, you'll find part of our website, and you can get like a free t-shirt or some other stuff or some other quotes for your current business with your logo or whatever you're doing. So if you have any questions for us, go ahead and speak to us with, these jackets and hats. We all look the same, but different types of people and do different things. We're very grateful for RevRoad for this time. And with that, I just want to thank you all for being here. Thank you so much.
Carson, I didn't know you were so funny. Good. That's wonderful. And thank you again for lunch. Be sure to thank them for lunch when you go back. They have a coupon in the back for some of those services that he mentioned up here. Thanks again for lunch. I want to thank Brad, Bree, Joe, Yuki, and all of our team behind the scenes that help put each month's review together. There's a lot that goes into this, and we're grateful to all those who have joined online. And we've got a full house today. What we want to do really, really quickly is give you a snapshot of next month and who's coming to speak. So take a look at this short video.
Hey everyone, my name is Brock Blake. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Lendio. We're the largest marketplace in the United States for business loans. Can't wait to be at Rev University on August 5th. We'll be talking about war stories of raising money and some of the pain that I have gone through in my career and to raise $80 million of equity capital. Look forward to seeing you there.
Okay, August 5th, be here. We're excited about that. So what we normally do when we end an event here at RevRoad is we do our fun little cheer. Ready, set, everybody says Rev. So let's hear it. Ready, set, Rev. Enjoy lunch.